Hey, it's Tree, and so today I am working on the last of the line art for Chapter 2. This is page 13, and you can read Wakefield on Webtoons and Tapas from beginning to whatever current page I'm posting. Usually I post them on Fridays. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about what art classes were like at my community college I went to. Now, if you don't know, a lot of things about like art colleges and community colleges, they're kind of different. But I mainly mean that in the sense of like the culture. So in my case, the community college that I'm going to in my area or whatever, it's mainly focused on like technical degrees. I know it's very big on like nursing and things like that, but also like welding, computer programming, things like that, but they kind of expect you to transfer from that college to other colleges later. But if you're still in high school, whatever, it's kind of similar to that because you need certain requirements in your degree before you graduate. So my first few years of college, I'd be taking like basic classes for English, math, and things like that. And on like first day things, people would talk about what they're majoring in, and it was very rare that there were any other artists in those classes. But I know there were artists that go to that school, I don't really think I encountered other artists until I was taking my first art history class, because if you were taking studio art, they require you to have like art history 1 and 2. But I ended up taking like an intro to art class in between art history 1 and 2. And like one of the things about my first art history class was that when we would have assignments, sometimes she would incorporate us making an art piece. And I guess there wasn't that many artists in that year, but some of the people were kind of complaining about the fact that they had to make art. So I guess they were either history majors or art history majors. And I mean, I kind of get it, but it was a little off-putting. But I would definitely say that when I took Intro to Art, I kind of didn't have that experience because we do lecture, and then she'd assign us something to draw, I believe. So, not that many people were complaining, because that teacher in particular decided to make like the assignments fun to do. And I had a much better experience when I took art history 2, because I guess you could consider my art history 2 teacher a little unconventional for art history. She was an art she did art herself basically, and she had traveled to Europe and things like that. But also she was younger than my other professors at that time. And that's kind of why I consider her a little bit unconventional, because in this area, particularly where I grew up, you don't really encounter people that like travel for fun. But even though it was like art history, our first intro assignment, she had us draw a picture of ourselves, no matter how like bad the drawing was, and she would compliment each person on their drawing. And I thought that was nice. Another thing about like my community college in particular, they have this magazine that like has art and writing in it. So like some of the English professors and some of the art professors would come together and they would help judge for this magazine, like who made it in and who made it out. And then they have like a judge that decides who wins. Then there's like a first place and a second place and a third place winner for both like writing and art. But one of the things that kind of discouraged me about this magazine was that, and I'm not trying to say like it's bad art, it's just not what I was expecting, I mean, I kind of consider anything art, like, those weird paintings where they're just one color. That's still art to me. because like the artist is trying to convey an emotion. But in these magazines, I noticed that a lot of the art that was featured was kind of like serious or gory, or they're very realistic, and maybe some of them are abstract just a little bit. But yeah, even though it's like a me thing, I kind of felt a little bit discouraged because my art's kind of cartoony, and it kind of felt like my art didn't belong there. And then I took my first studio classes. So at my college, there's 2 studio classes. There's a color theory class, and then there's 2 drawing classes. So in the first of the studio and the drawing classes, they would spend 3 hours teaching you like the basic fundamentals of art, and then they would test you on like different terms. But by the time I started my first 2 studio and drawing classes, 2020, yeah, it was 2020. So I only really spent maybe 2 or 3 months in those classes before we were kind of forced out. All of the classes moved to like online stuff, and I've kind of been doing online classes ever since. But when it was in person, it was a nice environment, I think. My studio or drawing professor was my advisor, so I already knew her. And then my studio, the other teacher, was that unconventional art teacher. And they both basically made that class fun to have. So in the drawing classes, we would sit, and she would arrange the desks in groups and then have like a table in the middle, and then set up some boxes and things, and then we'd have to draw the box from whatever angle we were at. And there was this one assignment where she had us draw for a little bit and then switch papers and use a different color on somebody else's paper, basically. And one of the things she would do when we were drawing on our own, these boxes and stuff, she would help us draw it and kind of help us get the angles in mind. One of the things that we did in particular was like drawing an actual chair in front of us, and that's different for me. I'm definitely going to do a video talking about like my high school art experience, just so there's a comparison there. But it's different from my high school art classes. And this college in particular, with your drawing and studio classes, you had to like do 3 hours. So I would spend 3 hours in my drawing class in the morning, and then 3 hours in my studio class in the afternoon. And you do that like 2 times a week. And I don't know, it was kind of interesting going from my art history class to where people would complain about drawing. And then in my art classes, they were like mostly people that wanted to be there, and then there was this one guy that was complaining, so it was different. And then another thing we would do in both the studio and the drawing classes is that we would draw a piece and then take that piece and hang them all up, and then we would critique each individual piece. In particular, my drawing class, when we would do that, if we were focusing on a certain concept, she would ask us which of the pieces in this group particularly was demonstrating like pointillism or something like that, you know. But like one of the things is we weren't drawing on like any paper. We had to draw on like these big sheets of paper, and I had to buy like a lot of art supplies for these drawing classes. And we could keep some things in the classroom, but I chose only to keep like sketchbooks and stuff in my classroom. So after we were forced to go online, there is a solid month or 2 where they wouldn't let us come back to get our stuff. So I had to improvise and draw on other things. Like, I had some of my stuff with me, but I definitely left a couple sketchbooks at the classroom. And basically what they did is they had us come to the college, and they would let us in the room one by one to get our stuff. And of course I wore a mask, and I stayed safe, and we social distanced. But I felt very sad to leave that classroom. And I still do feel kind of sad that I never was able to go back to that classroom. And I'm probably never going to be able to step foot in that college again. I didn't really know that I would be going online this long. But I definitely feel like the art classes that I had online were a little bit different. Like, it was some of the stuff, but I could tell they were holding a little bit back because they couldn't do, like, the other stuff that they were doing in the classrooms. Like, one of the Drawing 2 classes in particular, they had to do stuff out of, like, plaster, or they would, like, draw a still life of, like, glasses and things, and we never got to do that in my online classes. But yeah, I feel like that sums up my community college post Panini college experience. And yeah, if you enjoyed listening to me ramble, I upload on this channel every Thursday right now, and I will see you next time.